So we now have a player prefab and a platform prefab. Now let's have a look at how we go about creating an object that your character is going to pick up as you play the game. So this might be coins, or in this case we're going to use a gem. So when they collect the gem, it'll add a number to their overall gem score. So let's have a look at how we might implement this. In our Ninja Themes folder, under Objects and Tiles, there is this gem object. Make sure it is of Sprite 2D and UI, and drag it onto the scene. It's probably a little bit too big, so I'm just going to go back to the gem object and change its pixels per unit to 125. When I click off, it's going to ask me if I want to apply the import settings. Go to Apply. And there you go, the gem is just a little bit smaller in the scene. Let's just start by renaming our gem to Takeable Gem. Press Enter to apply the name change. Now let's grab the gem and drag it into our prefabs folder so that we have a prefab for it. Okay, so by default we have a transform and sprite renderer component. Let's have a think about how we want to interact with this object. So when the character walks into it, we want the gem to be removed from the scene, and effectively the gem is collected. So we need a way of knowing when the character interacts with the gem. So let's go to Add Component, Physics 2D, and Circle Collider. Okay, that looks pretty good. We might just want to reduce down the radius a little bit. Perfect. Now because we want something to happen when the character interacts with the gem, we need to tick on Is Trigger. Notice that we're not adding a rigid body 2D. That's because we don't need the gem to fall to the ground or move in any way. It's simply going to float in the air, and when the bounding box of the character interacts with the bounding box of the gem, it's going to be collected. Okay, let's just move it over here a little bit. Now we need to add a bit of code. So select Add Component, come down to New Script. It's going to be a C# script, and let's call it Collect Gem. Now select Create and Add. So when we do it that way, the script is automatically added against the object. We do, however, need to go back to our Assets folder and drag the script into the script folder. Okay, now we can double click on the script to open it. Now we don't actually need a start or update function, as the only thing we're going to be doing with this script is reacting to when the object has an interaction. So let's start that function with void on trigger enter, and that will accept an object of type Collider2D, and we'll call that object target. Now we can't just take any interaction, otherwise it might be an enemy that triggers off the gem and then it's collected without the player ever touching it. So we need a way to check that the collision is with the player. So let's come back over here to our player character. And notice up here there's tag and then a drop down next to it. Let's click that drop down and go to player. And just apply the change to the prefab. Okay, so back in our script, we can now say if the target's game object tag, so let's break that down. The target is the collider that's been passed into this function when a collision occurs, and it will be attached to a game object. The game object will be the owner of the collision body for that object. So in this case, we want to find a target collider which is attached to the player. And then when we have that game object, we're going to now check the tag. And check that the tag is equal to player. So only the player object will trigger off this if statement. Now later on we're going to have a look at how you're increasing the count of gems collected. But for now, let's just look at how we remove the object. So let's call destroy. And we want to destroy the game object that this script is attached to. So we can do that just by calling game object. So when you use GameObject like this without it being linked to another object first, it will automatically assume that you're talking about the GameObject which is attached to the script. And by GameObject I mean this here, the takeable gem object, which is linked to the script we're just working on now. Okay, so that's all we need to do. Make sure you save the script. Head back over to Unity. If you're not sure if the script is saved properly, you can just click over here and it'll give you a preview of the script. Okay, so I'm just going to apply any changes to the prefab and select Apply. Okay, so now when my character touches it, the object is removed, and you can see that it was even removed from the hierarchy. However, when I stop the game from running, it will be re-added to the hierarchy. Later on we'll be looking at how you increment the current number of gems when we have a look at how you save your game data.